Yeah, like, I've got a question.
Okay.
Have you ever been fingered by a MMA fighter before?
No.
What would it take to
To finger me?
Yeah.
This is Johnny with TigerBomb MMA, and today I'm going to give you my thoughts on UFC 304, Edwards versus Muhammad, give you my thoughts and predictions on that entire card. 14 total bouts taking place in Manchester, England, and there's a lot of English fighters here, a lot of fighters fighting out of that region as well, so it's going to be interesting how the scorecards are going to be tallied and if there's going to be any hometown decisions for some of these fighters. I have to say, I had a shooty bad. I limited myself to cursing in this video because I don't deserve the curse. Previous fight card, the Lemos versus Jandiroba fight, it was like my personal, like, I don't want to say 9/11 because 9/11 is my 9/11, but my personal Vietnam. I wasn't around at that time, so yeah, that was my Vietnam. I'm like, oh my God, they're in the trees. I went 2 out of 11. Those are like WNBA rookie numbers, and I was so pissed. And I'm giving you my thoughts on how that happened. But yeah, this entire card, the Muhammad versus Edwards fight, and then on top of that, Aspinall versus Blaydes 2. It's a great card. It's a really good card. There's a lot of fun fights on here. There's a couple sleepers as well. There's a lot of stuff to break down, and I'm going to give you my entire thoughts and predictions on that card. But before I do that, I did want to go over Lemos versus Jandiroba. Man, I was like in disbelief. I was like, are you absolutely kidding me here? Like, to the point that I'm like, yo, guys, in the Discord, like, just bet Jandiroba by knockout because, like, clearly the opposite of what I picked is going to win. My two winners, I'll get into that. One of them, funny enough, both of them were not starting off very good. One of them took over midway through. The other one, we'll get to it. But, man, it sucked. It really sucked. All that research that I put into that just for the opposite to happen. Like, I even said some stuff about betting some people, and I ended up betting one guy that I regret because he performed poorly, and then another guy because he did not perform to his highest abilities as well, but it was rough. So yeah, first fight of the night was Thomas Peterson defeating Muhammad Usman. I specifically said, man, Usman should win this one. I took him at like minus 120. I put 1 unit on it. I was going to put more, like a lot more, but I was thinking to myself, let's not. That sounds like a dumb idea. So I avoided that, but I still lost here. Worst loss of my professional career. Like, I even tracked it down. I'm like, this has to be the worst. And I'm like, no, I'm sure I've had worse. Nope, absolute fucking worst. Damn. Anyways, I only get one. Yeah, Muhammad didn't do anything. He looked absolutely petrified. He even got taken down and he got back up, but he just felt like he could not fathom getting taken back down. Everything that Peterson was landing on him was affecting him, and he was like overreacting to everything. And I'm like, dude, just keep going, land the jab. He was landing the jab nicely in the first round, and then he fought terrified. I was very, very disappointed. But you know what? I knew that could happen. So I'm like, it is what it is. Let's move on. Let's move on to the next fight. I was like, okay, Luana Carolina versus Pudilova. I picked Pudilova, but I'm like, if she can't get takedowns, it's not really going to plan out for her. So I actually max bet at a certain point Carolina with whatever was left in my like online account. I usually try to avoid betting online because I get a little too nuts with that. So I mostly play in the casino. So I didn't put much on Carolina. Plus, I took her at like minus 360 when I knew that Pudilova could not get a takedown. And at that point, Carolina just was the quicker, better fighter. Pudilova was just like, I don't know, like it was the oddest thing. What they do best, some of these fighters avoided doing. So I was very, very upset. So it is what it is. I'll take it on the chin. Trey Ogden defeats Loic Radzhabov. To be fair, at least to Radzhabov, like he could have won that fight given that he actually did the most damage, but it was really down to round number 2 how you scored it. Round number 3, he got dominated. Trey Ogden is that weasel. He weasels out these decisions. I did not expect Radzhabov to give up those takedowns that easily, but when he put it on Trey Ogden, you saw how petrified he was to actually engage, and then he kept shooting him for the takedowns. Luckily, he would get them. In the second round, it was all Loic doing damage, but then he got put in a pretty tight arm triangle that he couldn't get finished. Trey, that is, And then third round, basically the same thing. I believe Trey had mount, but then Loic reversed him, started landing bombs. Given like my judging criteria, I would have given it to Trey, but someone not taking that crap that day of like not doing anything with full mount or doing any damage, it could have gone Rod to Bob's way. So that was a rough one because Trey, he's weaseling out these decisions, and I should give him a little bit more credit for that. Maverick defeating Barboza. I was confident that Barboza was just not that good, to the point that I didn't bet Maverick because I thought it was overpriced, but Maverick was losing that first round. I think the striking of Barboza was looking good, and then Barboza at one point, I believe, got her to the ground, but Maverick was just a little too strong, a little too intelligent on the mat, avoided everything. She's one of the few people that actually predicted correctly. I did. And she ended up winning that fight, at least clearly a 29-28. She won a unanimous decision. Barboza, her striking looked good early. I actually even bet her plus 200, but I started kind of seeing the tide turn, and there was a brief period where she went back to the original odds that I bet her in, like the plus. Actually, no, she went to plus 140, so I cashed out. I kind of saw the writing on the wall that she wasn't going to be able to like get back up from bottom. She was too content playing off of her back. And yeah, it wasn't much, but I cashed that money out, got my money back. But Barboza, I mean, I'm not wrong about her, I don't believe. I think she is improving, at least from what I saw on the stand-up. She looked a bit more competent. But a girl like Maverick, even though she was like minus 200, she didn't necessarily live up to that price tag, even though she won pretty comfortably. We'll see what happens with both these ladies. But Maverick, to me, when she has the upper hand in the grappling, she's more than likely going to win. In this case, she just has to be smart against the black belt in jiu-jitsu. Cody Gibson destroys Brian Kelleher. I actually picked Kelleher because I'm like, yeah, Cody is either going to run through people or he's going to gas himself out, or he's just not going to perform correctly. And in this case, I didn't really know that he started training full-time. He looked good. He ran through Kelleher. It was what it was. I picked Kelleher more so as like I cannot pick Cody. So I took that one on the chin. It's fine. Cody, though, although he looked good here against Kelleher, I don't know how good he's going to look against better competition. Kelleher just kind of riding in the wall for him, like he has nothing left in the tank. I really thought that based off of the people finishing him early in those first 2 rounds, he was at least going to show some light here. He had really nothing. He jumped for guillotine at one point, never actually had it. At that point, he gave up the position to Cody Gibson, which is exactly what Cody wanted, and he was able to finish from there. Haider Emil defeating Jung Young Lee. This one really bothered me because I know Haider Emil's capable of just bringing out the dog in himself, but Jung Young Lee, he got played here. Haider played him exactly how Haider needed to, because had this been the fight that Jung Young Lee should have fought, where he's the more faster technical guy on the outside, I do think he would have caught Haider at one point and knocked him out. He got rocked pretty early. His eyes went to the back of his head, and then Haider, props to him though. I'm not mad at Haider. Haider did exactly what he needed to do. He G-checked the boy. He's like, let's go. And Jung Young Lee, instead of like disengaging, he decided to get into that firefight with him, and he paid absolutely dearly. And that's when I'm like, yo, what the hell's going on here? Like, how come these fighters aren't doing what I thought they were going to do? Like, all the tape that I watch. But yeah, props to Haider, though. He deserved that fight of the night, or I guess performance of the night. 100%. Like, he's got limited time, so he needs to do stuff like that. Like, exciting guy. He put on like a 34-punch combination on Jung Young Lee, so props to him. It sucks to see a Tiger go down, but that guy deserved it. Next bout, Doo Ho Choi versus Bill Algeo. Now, I'll give myself leeway here. I got this one wrong. I picked Algeo, but I did say, Doo Ho Choi, he's a lot better than what we're expecting him to look. I couldn't get him where I wanted him in that spot, like money-wise, so I avoided this fight. I thought that he was going to probably get some rounds on Bill Algeo, but eventually he would fall back into that, accepting that he's going to lose if Bill Algeo puts pressure on him, and then he ended up cracking him in the second round. But what I was impressed with Doo Ho Choi was his grappling early. He was able to actually dominate Bill Algeo, even put him in a pretty tight submission. Bill Algeo gets out of it. He even does like the Sonic the Hedgehog, like, no, he's not in the sub. But then, yeah, he popped him in the eye, more than likely broke his orbital. Props to Doo Ho Choi. I was very happy to see him back. Like, he needed that win. And I kind of saw like, yeah, man, like he might be the guy. Unfortunately, I should have picked him to win instead of the other Korean and the other Korean. Next guy that actually won me a prediction was Bruno Silva defeating Cody Durden. Cody was beating, I was going to say a bad word. He was beating up Bruno Silva pretty badly, hurting him on the feet. Cody was looking very good, very, very good. And then Bruno in the second round kind of noticed that Durden was ducking his head quite a bit, caught him with the uppercut. That was a beautiful uppercut. Knocked the mouthpiece out of him, finished him up on the ground with the elbows. That one was close for me to being like, yo, man, what's going on here? Why is everyone that I'm picking losing? But yeah, props to Bruno Silva. He shows how good he can be. He just needs to be way more active. Cody, though, like, I don't think either man's stock went down. Like, I believe that's the first time Cody's ever been finished with strikes. And Bruno's just showing how dangerous he is. But we see what Bruno needs to work on. I think he was a little rusty in the cage. Man, both guys, though, put on a great fight. Next bout, Kurt Holobaugh defeats Kainan Krzyzewski. I actually put more units than I should have on Krzyzewski. I felt confident that he was going to be the bigger guy. He was going to use his grappling and his jiu-jitsu to beat Kurt Holobaugh. The moment I saw Krzyzewski try to walk him down and strike with him, and Holobaugh was catching him, I'm like, I am absolutely screwed here, because he did absolutely nothing that I wanted him to do. Like training with the nerds, and I overvalued that, and I will get to that when I'm talking about the breakdown at 304. I don't want to say that I overvalued it, even though I just did. It's more so I need to come to the realization that despite that being a great camp, they're not going to make the fighter do what they need to do. In this case, Krzyzewski in the third round did get Holobaugh down. He got hurt in the second. He was doing really well in the second. I had him winning the second. And then he got hurt. He had Holobaugh in a tight ninja choke. He went for a guillotine. He was just making a lot of bad mistakes that it was like, why are you fighting like a regional fighter, man? He was gassing himself out. I've seen this guy go 5 rounds multiple times. I've seen him get finishes in the 5th and in the 4th. I'm like, yo, what is wrong with you, bro? Like, is it just because I put money on you that you had to lose? It is what it is, man. Like, Holobaugh gutted it out. Like, he has that vet dog in him. And what was funny to me is that the third round, a round that Krzyzewski didn't really do much with, even though he got a takedown, which he should have done in the freaking first round, he won that round, apparently. I did not give him that round. So I find that kind of fascinating when it comes to the judging and what they're seeing when it comes to the top control again, because it was top control and kind of holding dudes down and not doing anything with it, opposed to damage at one point, and then it became damage is king. Is that kind of leaning back? I'm a little bit worried when I'm looking to maybe bet certain fights that there might be damage and like time control output differences. But yeah, horrible, horrible night for me. Steve Garcia defeats Sung Woo Choi. I really, really wanted to see better from Sung Woo Choi. I thought he was going to counter well. At a certain point, I saw him doing that. I saw him being patient. I saw him trying to counter, and he actually cracked Steve, but not enough to hurt him. And then Steve just went bum rush on him. If you want to hear a massive cope, though, because I did bet Sung Woo Choi, I put half a unit on him. Massive cope being he does get dropped, but most of those punches were to the back of the head. So I'm like dying on the inside. I'm like, they're not going to say anything. I'm like, at this point, I'm like accepting my fate. Like, I fucked up this whole card. But, you know, some of those were to the back of the head. I do think that Herb is like, I don't want to deal with any of that stuff from last week where it was a no contest. So let's just sweep this one under the rug. What I find funny, though, is that this is not the first time a Korean fighter, technically Korean, let's go with that, because he's half Korean, half Japanese, has been hit in the back of the head pretty flush and then been called the knockout. I always remember Vitor Belfort versus Yoshihiro Akiyama, Sexyama for those who are uninitiated. He hits him, he drops him, face plants him, hits him in the back of the head a few times. I was pissed. I was like, why did they not call that? So I always have that trauma of like poor Korean fighters getting hit in the back of the head. But yeah, props to Steve. Steve is a monster, man. But my issue with Steve, and I will continue saying this going forward, one of these days that bum rush is not going to work for him. He's going to get caught again. Like, it just so happens that Sung Woo Choi didn't do it this time, but someone else will. I know that for a fact, because Steve is just so balls to the walls. I love it, but it's not a great game plan when you're going to get better counter strikers moving forward. Virna Jandiroba defeats Amanda Lemos. I liked what Lemos was doing, right? At this point, I accepted, like, I'm screwed here. Lemos was defending well with the takedowns. She even got bits of control, but she never disengaged the grappling. She just continued to stay in that range, and Virna capitalized. Like, she looked good. She went for those full, all-out takedowns, eventually took her back. Lemos was looking pretty good up until she got caught in that nasty armbar, even defending it pretty well until she couldn't. Yeah, it is what it is, man. Like, Lemos, to me, I thought she was the value side. I thought Virna was going to do essentially what she did, but eventually get tired, and Lemos would eventually take over. Not the case. She got caught in that armbar. Beautiful armbar, absolutely. And then she did that little Virna that is that, like, damn, I'm limiting myself to insults because I should not be talking crap after this bad night. But she does that, like, that. I'm like, dude, with that lazy eye, you should probably never do that again. But yeah, overall, rough night for me. Absolutely rough. I need to learn from that. More so, pick the right guys this time, right? 50-50 matchups, just go against my instinct in those. Anyways, I will give you my thoughts on this upcoming card, the Edwards Muhammad card. I did a ton of tape watch here, like, more so to just be positive. I'm like, I don't want to have that nasty feeling of getting all these predictions wrong, to the point that someone left a comment. I think it was like Spider-Man, Tom Holland, was, you got worst YouTube MMA predictor or whatever 2 weeks in a row. I'm like, mother fudger. I mean, I know this week I deserved it, but last week I didn't think I was that bad. I went like 50%. Yeah, I'm capping at like maybe 62% right now, which is not good. I wanted it to get closer to 70, but the year is not over. I will recover. This night was a big setback, but I am looking to recover with this card because there's a bunch of good stuff on here. There's like a lot of value I see on certain fighters, a lot of lines that I think are wide. I think a lot of people are going to see these as wide. And on top of that, we've got some newcomers in Alice Ardelean versus Shauna Bannon, and first fight of the night. This is at strawweight. I have to say outright, like, I think there's some value here on the underdog at the plus 180 for Ardelean. She's 34 years old. She's 5'3". She's got a 9-5 record. That record, it's not great. It really isn't. And I'll explain why I think there's some value on her. But she's fighting a minus 220 Shanna Bannon. I don't think Shanna should be anywhere close to minus 220 in these odds. Like, I don't think she possesses the kind of power to indicate that she's going to be able to dominate this fight. She's more of a karate point style kind of fighter. She has some decent ground game. But my biggest issue with her, and although I know she is working on her boxing, she trains with Patty Houlihan, who used to train at Straight Blast Gym. I think he owns his own gym now. Pretty good flyweight, but he was just a little too big, and I think an injury, more of like an illness, got him to stop fighting. He had to retire. But I always thought he was a good fighter. Just, you know, a little too skeletal for the lighter division, so like my 125. But Shanna Bannon, my initial take on her is that, like, she can win against lower level fighters, lower fighters that really don't possess much of a threat, who are primarily grapplers. Her takedown defense is fine. I think her striking is it's good because it's like a karate base. She has a taekwondo base. She has a very good educated lead leg. She can throw high kicks, mostly like side push kicks. Not much with the hands. The thing about her is that she can definitely point fight, and she can point fight to a decision here, a victory. My biggest issue with her is she doesn't really possess kind of any sort of authoritative power to really back off a girl like Alice. And I will talk about Alice. She's a kickboxer. She is not very good. She actually fought Weili Zhang, lost to her. I also believe she lost to Belbita. Let me make sure, because I did a ton of tape on a ton of people, and I don't remember. Yeah, she lost to Belbita. She clearly, to me, is not UFC ready, right? But I don't think that matters here because I don't think Shanna Bannon is UFC ready either. I think both girls are at like the lower level of the division at strawweight. I mean, if they all fight each other, it's all going to be close. It's all going to be really, really close. Even like, for example, Shanna Bannon versus Bruna Brasil. It could have been closer, but again, Bannon doesn't really have any authoritative stank on them kicks or punches that could really deter Bruna Brasil. Bruna was just a little bit better because she throws a little bit harder. And Ardelean, that's what she does pretty well. She throws hard. She throws hard. She throws hard low kicks. She throws hard punches. Although she doesn't necessarily have the best top game, I can at least say that she's a scrappy gal. Now, my issue with her is that she has an OnlyFans, and that's always like a big fade. You have to fade the OnlyFans girls. And on top of that, she has like a YouTube channel where she's like a big bootied girl. And don't get me wrong, man, I love me the big bootied girls, but she seems to have more of an interest in that, like having like that fun-loving comedy personality and like, hey, look at my butt. And she's a funny girl. Like I think it's some of the stuff she has on her Instagram is pretty funny, but how seriously is she taking these fights, right? It's on short notice. I think Bannon was supposed to fight. Who was she supposed to fight? She was going to fight Ravana Oliveira, which, here's the thing, she had a full camp for that girl of trying to avoid takedowns. A full camp Shanna Bannon, I think, is going to be more on point. I think she's going to be able to keep Ardelean on the outside. My biggest problem, though, is that the odds themselves are not great. I think it should be closer to like maybe Shanna Bannon minus 150. I think there's a lot of value on Ardelean, given the fact that if she starts landing the harder punches and moving forward and maybe crowding Bannon, the kicker, she can definitely edge out a decision here. I really do think so. I don't think either girl's going to hurt each other. I just really want to see what Bannon can do with her improved striking and her boxing. It's just, to me, I don't see her having that kind of power to deter Alice to say, like, I got to stay on the outside. I think Alice is kind of a more so berserker that will go forward. Doesn't matter if she gets hit, she'll just go forward, and that's always going to look better to the judges opposed to like trying to point fight from the outside, because that's what I see Shanna Bannon as. I'm in that like, do I want to pick Ardelean? Because I am, fuck it, I'll take her by decision. It is what it is. Like, I'm trying. I got that PTSD from wanting to not pick wrong, but I do think that Alice can edge a decision out here because they're both lower level girls. And when that happens, there's more value on the unknown dog than there is on the 5-1 quote unquote prospect. They're both near the same age. Had Shanna been a little bit younger, I'd been like, yeah, I think she can learn from these mistakes. But at 30, she's stuck in those ways. And the 32-year-old's ways, in my eyes, the Ardelean side, are a little bit more pleasing as like a judge. Like if say Shanna's keeping her on the outside and Alice is just like, I'm just going to bum rush, and she lands a couple punches in a combination, and she does end her combinations with a low kick, that might be more visually pleasing. That's my thought process on it. So it's just something you should probably do, dog or pass. And I wouldn't even advise putting that much on Alice. It's just more so gas money, see what happens with that. But we shall see. We shall see. If they do give Ardelean anyone better with like definitive grappling ability, I think she's going to lose that for damn sure. But yeah, I will go with Ardelean reluctantly, just more so because of that ability to actually just move forward, probably eat some punches and land harder shots. Moving on, we have got Mick Parkin versus Lucas Brzeski. Minus 210 for Parkin. Come back on Brzeski is plus 175. And let me check my notes to be positive on this, because they mixed up the card. It used to be that Mokaev and Kape were on the main card, so now like all my notes don't match up. Yeah, minus 210 for Parkin. He's a bigger heavyweight between the two. I think Brzeski can definitely drop down to light heavyweight. And Brzeski is plus 175. What we saw with Brzeski in his last fight with Walter Walker is that he has a high output. He definitely has been improving his takedown defense and get-ups. But he is a smaller heavyweight. Like, he can get taken down by the much larger men. And although he does struggle sometimes to get back up, he can get back up. In most of his fights in the UFC, he's just fought the much bigger men, and he's just been either out-grappled or just, in one case, knocked out completely cold. But I look at this, like, is there value on Brzeski? He has a high output. This guy, let me make sure, yeah, on average, he does tend to throw like 200-plus strikes. He has more volume. Even when he's gassed, he will throw more volume. Mick Parkin, he is well-rounded. He trains with Tom Aspinall. He has good enough boxing. I think his jiu-jitsu is solid as well, but he does get hit quite a bit for my liking. And in this case, they don't even have that big of a reach differential. It's just 1 inch, 79 inches for Mick. Come back on, Brzeski is 78 and a third for whatever reason. I do lean Parkin, because if Parkin can get takedowns, I think he does have solid enough top control to maintain Brzeski on the ground. Mick Parkin's single leg was pretty solid against Machado, I believe, where he was getting takedowns there. But like I see Mick Parkin fight more and more in the UFC, and I start thinking to myself, like, this guy, how does he train with Aspinall? Like, I don't see any improvements in him. He gets hit a little too much for my liking. I like his ability to persevere and like adjust midway, like in the Usman fight. Usman, did I say Usman? Yeah, Muhammad Usman fight. Like, he got rocked early. He made some adjustments, but now seeing how bad Usman really is, I'm like, is that even a good thing? So I do think that Mick has to grapple here. I think he has to mix in his big body, kind of tire out Brzeski, because Brzeski does fatigue, and even though he does get fatigued, he will continue to throw. With this being his home country, and knowing that Brzeski has been essentially robbed before by a much larger man who just landed the harder shots, I think if Parkin can land the harder shots, keep him against the cage, work his wrestling, work his big body. And the big difference between Walter Walker and Mick Parkin is that I think Walter only has the ability to get it to the ground and not much else. He can get takedowns, but he doesn't really have control. I think Mick Parkin's jiu-jitsu is better than Walter. And, if he does get it to the ground, I think he's going to be able to maintain enough top control and make Brzeski work to fatigue him to edge out this really, really close decision. But I do think all the value is on Brzeski. If, say, he can stuff these takedowns, he can just throw more volume and out-volume Mick Parkin. This being the first official England fighter is going to really dictate, if this does go to a decision, how the rest of the card's going to go. So if Parkin is clearly getting outpointed on the feet, but he does get some top control with some, with a takedown, and he ends up winning the fight either via split or by like a unanimous 29-28, it would be a good indicator as to the rest of the night. Like, is Usman gonna... Usman, damn. I keep thinking of Usman because he screwed me. Is Muhammad gonna lose if he has a really close fight with Edwards? So for me, I will have to go with Parkin by a decision. To me, he has a clear path to victory. Both men have that clear path, but more so Brzeski and Parkin, if they both strike, I think Parkin can still land hard on the feet. Brzeski only has throwing punches, although I do like the impressive output. If he gets put on his back, that output essentially gets negated. So I will go with Parkin by that decision. He just has to use his size. He has to bully this kid around. I say, yeah, he's 32. Yeah, I say like he's a kid. He has to bully him around, get on top, and just eat away at that time. And I think he can edge out this decision, because on the feet, I think Brzeski's going to be a little bit too much for him. Just a little bit. Not to say he's going to get blown out of the water, but I've seen Mick get hurt a few times. Both men have. It's going to be a good scrap, but I'll go with Parkin by a decision. All right. Sam Patterson versus Kiefer Crosbie. Minus 350 for Patterson. Come back on Crosbie is plus 275. So automatically that plus 275 on Crosbie is there's value, right? There's value in a in a bet that you won't tell your friends about, because Crosbie has a puncher's chance. He has boxing background. He's not bad. He's really not bad as a fighter. I actually think his boxing is very, very good, especially when fighting larger, taller guys. I think he can find the chin with his overhands. He can time that. He can cut distance very well. He does have a black belt in jiu-jitsu. He trains out of SBG. My true opinion about Crosbie, though, is that when the going gets tough, he doesn't necessarily stop fighting. He doesn't necessarily quit, but he is accepting of the outcome. He is more than willing to be like, well, that's life. There was a fight in Bellator where like he was supposedly the better striker. I forgot the guy he lost to. What was his name? It was Charlie Leary. Charlie Leary is kind of like a journeyman, primarily a boxer, did transition into MMA. Not bad, but clearly beatable. Charlie Leary was putting it on Kiefer Crosbie at a certain point. Like I do see the fight in him kind of diminish. Like when he is the bully, he has that confidence, he moves forward, but when he gets cracked, it's just like, oh crap, he doesn't have that kind of dog in him. He does and he doesn't. It's hard to really pinpoint without physically showing you, but even in the fight with Juice in his UFC debut, he was doing well against Juice, and then Juice started mounting a little bit of a comeback, and you just saw the tide turn, and he kind of accepted he was going to lose, and he got taken down, he got choked out. With Patterson, his biggest issue obviously is the chin. He is moving up again to welterweight. He's made that move officially, and as much as I love Patterson's skill set, when I look at this kid, I do see a lot of skill, but biggest issue, doesn't move his head. He has that tall man's defense. He just kind of like keeps his head on the center line, and he's still hittable. My issue with him as well is obviously he's been knocked out and he's been hurt a lot. His last fight in lightweight, both are lightweights, by the way. They were both lightweights initially. They moved up to welterweight. His last fight at lightweight, obviously against Yash Ashmuz, he got knocked out pretty devastatingly at home, and now he's got a chance to redeem himself here against Kiefer Crosbie, who will not make it an easy fight for Sam Patterson. To me, Sam is just the more well-rounded guy. Even though I believe Patterson is just a brown belt, he shows very good jiu-jitsu. His long man chokes, his ability to get the darces, the guillotines, it's very good. I do obviously believe that him moving up to welterweight, where he's still huge, he's like 6'3", he's going to have an 8-inch reach advantage over Crosbie. It's not the end-all be-all, because Crosbie can close that distance very well and just loop overhands, and that's Sam Patterson's biggest issue. Sam Patterson's biggest issue is getting hit with overhands. The funny thing is that even though he got a very quick, very easy submission over Johan Lanus, it wasn't him initiating that grappling. He still got caught with an overhand right by Johan. It's just that Johan initiated the grappling. Sam was leagues better than him on the mat, took his back and choked him out. So I'm not positive that his chin is still all that great at welterweight, although he did eat that shot, didn't seem to affect him terribly. Moving up in weight is going to help that chin, but it doesn't really help his defense. Now, what I will pick is Patterson to win by a submission, more so because Kiefer is tough. He will not stop fighting if he's getting his head bashed in. It's only if you submit him that he's willing to just admit defeat, because even with the fight with Charlie Leary, when I go back, he was rocked, he was hurt, and he did get stopped via a pretty pathetic cut, which pisses me off, because when I look at tape on another guy on this card, particularly RoboCop, he had a nasty cut and they let him fight. So it's just like they pick and choose. So yeah, I will go with Patterson because I think he is the much better fighter. He has to be very careful here. Do not throw naked leg kicks to Kiefer Crosbie. Attack the body. Use your length effectively, but do not do anything that you shouldn't do. The other thing about Patterson that I've kind of noticed is that even though he is the longer guy, he's actually a lot better in the pocket. He has really good combinations inside, and while inside, I think he can react to punches a lot better than he can on the outside. And what I mean is that, like, for example, the Ashmuz fight, he kicked him on the outside. He got caught because he could not react correctly to the range. And it seems to be an ongoing thing with him. In his Contender Series fight, same basic thing, the much shorter guy, or not necessarily much shorter, but the shorter guy was able to land more so at will at distance because he just doesn't have the best reaction speed. But in close, where he can use his physicality, his clinch, his knees, his ability to get it to the ground. I think he's just much better. Like even throwing like inside the pocket, he just seemed a little bit more fluid. But on the outside, to me, it's just like he just cannot gauge that distance. I don't know if it's just his eyes are just not well adjusted for that, where he just can't see that shit coming. But that's my biggest issue here. I don't think it's going to be much of an issue if Patterson is going to fight intelligently. I think he can definitely do that here against Crosbie, who's going to be more so of a marauder. All he has to do is be careful, keep it on the outside, getting close when he gets Patterson close to the cage, or Crosbie, that is. Patterson gets Crosbie to the cage, work his body, eventually like chip away at him, take him down, and choke him out. So it should be cut and dry, but there's a lot of problem with that defense from Sam Patterson. So I will probably stay away from that one. Moving on. It's crazy that this fight is this early. Muhammad Mokaev versus Manel Kape. This is a bit of an insult, like for real. -125 for Mokaev. Come back on Kape is +105. I did quite a bit of research on this. A little too much research that like I went back and forth as to who I wanted to win. Well, I know who I want to win, but who I thought was going to win. Where are my notes here? For real, where'd they go? Giga Hobo Cop. Here we go. So, talking about Mokaev, because he's the more limited fighter here. Great wrestling. Absolutely great wrestling. He needs to work on his striking. He's only 23 years old. Essentially undefeated both in the amateurs and in the UFC, and period. He's 11-0. And why is he a -125 favorite over Manel Kape? It's a mystery, because to me, I think Kape is the more battle-tested. He's the older. He has better striking. He has better jiu-jitsu. He's super athletic. He is battle-tested, as I mentioned before. He hits harder. The dude is ridiculously fast. But I do have a dumb theory, and you can let me know if I'm off here. But Manel Kape, I feel as if the judges absolutely hate him. Like they do try to figure out a way to rob him some way or another. The reason for it is like I look at his fights, and when they go to a decision, like primarily the fight with Matheus Nicolau, I thought he clearly beat Nicolau. In the second round, obviously battered him up, and in the third round, I thought he landed the better shots. He's just clearly the better fighter, but they gave it to Nicolau. So I'm like, why did they do that? I see a bit of a trend with Manel Kape, and I'll talk about his skill set and whatever, but I just see a weird trend where he seems to drop the third round, or he does enough for the judges to say that he lost the third round. And that's been pretty consistent, I've noticed. Not in every single fight. Obviously, he gets knockouts and whatnot, but the David Dvorak fight, I believe one judge gave the third round to Dvorak, and in the Dos Santos fight, I believe it was a 29-28. I don't know if it was all three scorecards, but I know there was at least one 29-28. Mokaev, on the other hand, with him, he's a bit of a mixed bag. Like he needs his wrestling. In his last fight, it was not a great performance. He barely edged that out with the skin of his teeth. He did not look good. He said he was sick against Perez, and Perez was able to stuff his takedowns. And that's the biggest worry with Mokaev. If he cannot get his takedowns, he doesn't really have much on the feet, and he does that weird thing where he just kind of squats down when his opponent is moving forward, hoping to get a low double to blast and take you down. It works sometimes, and sometimes it doesn't. With Manel Kape, I don't know how well it's going to work. Now with Kape, I believe, let me check my notes here. Yeah, he's been giving up takedowns here and there. He gave up a takedown to Nicolau. He gave up a takedown to Dvorak as well, which is weird. And when I look at Manel Kape's previous fights, just to make sure how good his takedown defense is, it's really hard to gauge because the two times he's been kind of dominated on the mat, and that's where I worry the most about it. Like, will he get dominated on the mat? At least for a round, like if Mokaev takes him down, which I do believe Mokaev will get him down at least once, is he going to chip away at him by just being on top, maintaining Manel Kape, and stealing a round, either 1 or 2 rounds based off of that? Typically Manel Kape comes alive in the second round, and that's when he starts getting things together, starts landing nasty combinations. He's just really fast with the jab. Mokaev, obviously that's going to be his game plan, holding down Kape. But when I look at his fights in Risen, it was really hard to gauge because I've seen Manel Kape utterly destroyed by like Sasuke, a giant flyweight, a giant flyweight, used to fight in the UFC. But when I look at him, I'm like, well, it's not fair because obviously the ring's there. There's more of leverage to kind of extend your body if you're on top of somebody through the ropes, and on top of that as well, he was wearing shoes, Oka, so he was able to get Manel Kape down a lot easier. Then I look at Horiguchi's fight, same basic thing. Like Horiguchi was able to get him down clean, like in the middle of the cage or the ring, and he ended up submitting him. But it's a completely different story, so I couldn't really look at that, even though it was like clearly that he's getting dominated on the mat, and consider that as like data to use here because it's completely different. But with Mokaev, although I do think he's capable of getting Manel Kape down, Manel does have pretty good takedown defense. And then when he gets the ball rolling, he's really hard to hold down. He's really hard to keep down at certain points as well. To me, it comes down to like, am I really prepared to bet on a 23-year-old guy who has not been looking good, who's actually been losing rounds recently, to Manel Kape, who at a certain point was pretty close to fighting for the title. Had he beaten Nicolau, I think they would have put him in the title picture immediately had he not missed weight. He's fighting a grown man with grown man strength and a 30-year-old Manel Kape, so it's really hard to pick against Kape. I have to pick Kape. It's a dog or pass for me. And I do think it's going to be a decision. I don't think he's going to finish Mokaev. I think Mokaev is more than willing to get on his back if, say, Manel Kape is landing nasty shots. He does not want to he doesn't want to lose in the UK. He needs to come out here and dominate, and I don't think Mokaev is going to be able to do that against a guy as good as Manel Kape. If he does, it's going to be a nasty little grimy split decision where I think Mokaev can maybe get a takedown because his wrestling is really good. And I've always said, like, you give Mokaev more time to develop himself into a grown fighter, he's going to be great. He's absolutely going to be fantastic, but he cannot be giving up near losses to guys like Tim Elliott. That was just 2 fights ago, and him having a really poor performance against Alex Perez of all people, where even he was stuffing his takedowns. If Manel Kape stuffs your takedown and you're ducking under, he's going to catch you with an uppercut lightning fast, right? And I think Mokaev might take a bit of damage here. I just would not be surprised if they do rob Kape here. Again, I think that 3 rounds for Kape, if he hits the 3rd round, they always find a way to try to take it away from him. So I think Kape has to put it on Mokaev. Manel Kape's biggest enemy in his fights is himself. He doesn't throw enough sometimes. He plays around too much. Here, I don't think he's going to do that, though. I think he's going to find his spots. He's going to be too quick for Mokaev, striking-wise. His takedown defense is going to be on point. He will give up at least one, as I mentioned, probably early. And then I don't see him getting dominated. He has good jiu-jitsu off of his back. It's just if he continuously keeps giving up these takedowns round by round, Mokaev's not going to have any threat on the feet because obviously he's going to get him under the ground, and they're going to give all that control time to Mokaev. Now, if Mokaev takes him down and dominates him and beats him up, I'd be very surprised because Manel Kape isn't that kind of a fighter. He's very well-rounded. I believe a black belt in jiu-jitsu as well. So him being the smaller guy with that explosivity, with the ability to go for flying knees, and if Mokaev dare attempt that, like, I'm going to stop, squat, and then try to take you down, he's probably going to eat a nasty knee. So for me, I think it's Kape by decision or possibly late finish. But knowing Mokaev, I don't think he's going to want to get finished. He's a tough kid. He definitely has shown that grit to not give up. So I think that Mokaev will continue to try to fight, maybe clinch up if he does get hurt by Kape. So I will go Kape by a decision, but that is a risky thing to bet, especially considering that, like, I'm already thinking that people hate him, like these judges despise Manel Kape for whatever reason. But yeah, I'll go with Kape by a decision. Next bout, Oban Elliott versus Preston Parsons, what I like to call the mirror matchup because they are essentially the same fighter. All right, where are my notes here? So what I'll say about Preston Parsons is what I've always said about Preston. The dude can grapple, very good. He's a brown belt in jiu-jitsu. I believe he actually just got promoted to black belt. Let me confirm. No, he is still a brown belt. So what I've always said, just to keep it short, because this is going to be whoever gets more top control is going to win this one. On the feet, they are comparable. They both have decent enough striking, but I do believe that minus 160 pressure Preston Parsons is a little bit more diverse than the Welsh gangster Oban Elliott at plus 130. His last fight against Semi the Jedi was a good visual for me, because I've always said Preston has decent striking. He's very athletic himself, very big legs, throws good kicks, decent hands. Like, I've always been semi-impressed by his striking. And I have a goofy ass scenario to kind of give you the impression of what I always thought about Preston Parsons, that his striking is solid enough to win a UFC fight, but he panics sometimes and tries to engage in the grappling, which then is very obvious to his opponent that he wants to grapple, that it makes it harder for him to get a takedown. So to me, and not to compare him to Pereira, obviously, he's not Alex Pereira, he's not at that level striking, but imagine if Alex Pereira was a grappler. Same exact kickboxing ability, but he's a grappler. He's just winning on the feet. He's doing well on the feet. He can probably win on the feet, but he desperately wants a takedown, that he overextends himself and he panics and he can't get the takedown. And he loses by, instead of striking, going for a takedown. That is the most extreme example I can give you about Preston Parsons, but that is kind of how I view him. He is a grappler. He's very good at that, but he is not patient enough to try to engage his striking. And here, against Oban Elliott, who is going to actually try to take him down, because Oban, his striking's fine. It's nothing great. I've seen him get rocked multiple occasions in his last, 3 fights or so. The guy is, he's just like Preston Parsons, but just a little bit worse. I've seen Oban Elliott essentially go through guys and use his grappling to win these fights, but what he does is he kind of fatigues his fighters. He kind of reminds me a bit of early stages of Bilal Muhammad, where he engages in wrestling and then he becomes the better striker because his opponent is gassed. If Preston Parson here is the one engaging in the grappling, even if he gets taken down, he has nasty sweeps off of his back. I think that Preston's going to win this one by a decision, mainly doing the same game plan as he did against Semi the Jedi. He uses his grappling, he sets it up with his striking. When he's doing well with the striking, I think he's going to continuously stay there up until he can find the right opportunity to go for the takedown. But Elliott, the issue with Elliott to me is that he is, again, a lot like Preston, where his striking's fine. It's nothing special. I think definitely it's a step below Preston Parsons, but he really desperately wants to get the takedown. And how well is he going to do against Preston Parsons, whose jiu-jitsu is legitimate? I think he can get caught in anything from a rear naked choke, a guillotine, an arm bar, and it's going to be a tough fight for Oban in my eyes. So I will go with Preston Parsons to win this one by a decision. I think Oban is tough. I think he can definitely survive here. Preston's not like a massive knockout puncher, but I would not be surprised if he does finally put those strikes together and actually land something clean on Oban, who has been wobbly a bit too many times. His last fight was against Val Woodburn, who did rock him, and then what did he do? He took Val down, gassed him out, and he ended up winning that one by a decision. I honestly think that Preston would have finished Val Woodburn in those situations. He would have taken him down and finished him, but I think Oban, this was a tough fight for him because it is very much so a mirror matchup for him. So if he tries to take Preston down, that's exactly what Preston wants, and that's where he can work his jiu-jitsu. So I will go Preston by a decision. Next bout, we've got Modestas Bukauskas versus Marcin Prachnio. This fight I did the least amount of research on. It was initially the first fight of the night. They moved it up, but we've got minus 150 for Bukauskas, come back on Prachnio plus 125. I've seen some love for Prachnio, and I just do not get it. I do get the fact that Prachnio, when he is a significant underdog, he ends up pulling something out of his ass based off of his opponents doing something terrible. Like I watched his fights with, say, William Knight, where William decided to not throw any strikes. He didn't want to win, and of course he lost. He was a pretty big favorite there. At that point, that's where like you think you cannot fight these fights for these fighters. Like as much as you are a better game planner for these fighters, they are not going to go out there and execute what you think they're going to execute. So I think in that case, Prachnio was it was a positive victim of circumstance against these fights, like William Knight against Devin Clark. Devin Clark he just stood there. He just stood there, got kicked. And what was even funnier is that like Prachnio was like huffing and puffing like a guppy, trying to breathe for air, and nothing happened. Like Prachnio just threw a bunch of kicks. He was throwing nasty overhand rights, and that was enough for Brown Bear Devin Clark to just be like, yeah, I don't want any part of that. I'm like, dude, he is there to be countered. All he tried to do was take him down, and Prachnio's takedown defense was holding up. And he gassed himself out terribly, and he was essentially doing just sparring. Like he was just throwing way too hard overhand rights. And to me, I don't see the value on Prachnio. I think Modestas Bukauskas, bearing that he gets knocked out with anything silly, I think he's going to win this one handedly. I think he's a good counter striker. He's got good lateral movement. I think as of late, he's been developed into a much better fighter, a bit higher fight IQ. I know he got knocked out his last fight, but that was against a very talented guy who actually finished Prachnio himself. And with Prachnio, he does have hard low kicks. He has a lot of hard high kicks as well. They get blocked. So he's a dangerous guy, but other than just his hard kicks and low kicks, which could affect the movement of Modestas, he doesn't have much. I think the moment he starts getting a bit tired, he will continuously try to go for that overhand right, which I think Modestas will just be able to pull back counter and 1-2 down the middle, which would hurt Prachnio. So to me, I think it's going to be a TKO for Modestas in the second or third round at -130, -150. I like Modestas in this spot. I don't see it, man. I don't see Prachnio getting any better. Like he's got that karate background, but that was a really bad red flag against Devin Clark. Like he is winning these fights based off of his opponent not doing anything. And Modestas, I don't think he's going to allow himself to get caught in that kind of situation. I don't think he's going to see Marcin Prachnio and get starstruck by him. The biggest threat here is just watch the kicks. You know, Modestas has had his leg busted up by that villain Khalil Roundtree. And yeah, man, they have a very similar record. It's I don't see this being a close fight. I think the striking, the better boxer here, Modestas, a better kickboxer, is going to find that counter shot eventually and maybe hurt Prachnio, maybe finish him late. I'll go round number 2 TKO. Next bout, short notice bout here between Colin Laughran, I always have trouble with his name, versus Jake Hadley. These two damn daywalkers, man. A -195 for Laughran, come back on Jake Hadley +165. So this is 135 bantamweight. Jake Hadley's moving up on short notice. He's looking in great shape. I'm positive he's going to make weight. And he's fighting the Don here, 9-1 in Laughran. What I will say about Laughran, good power in his punches, great wrestling, very strong and heavy on top. I like Laughran a lot, but even though I faded him in his last fight, I picked against him against Angel Pacheco. It was for the main reason is that he doesn't move his head. He has boxing, but he hasn't have that developed defensive boxing. Where when I look at this, I see a lot of danger for Colin. Where if he is having trouble on the feet, he will definitely get a takedown. I think he can definitely take down Jake Hadley, no problem. But Jake has very good guillotine attempts where he can get in trouble here. So there's a bit of danger here for Colin to fight Jake Hadley on short notice. I think Jake is pretty live to get a finish, especially by a submission or maybe even a decision. Not to say I'm picking Jake. I mean, there's a lot of negative things for Jake as well, is that although he's very, very good off of his back, he often can't get back up. I mean, I look at fights against him and but also Nascimento, where Nascimento was taking him down. He was threatening Nascimento off of his back very nicely, but Nascimento's a 125er where he's cutting all this weight, and Jake Hadley just had a little bit more energy. I don't think he's going to be able to do that to Colin, who is a thick boy. Like when I say he gets on top of people, I think he's going to be able to dominate Jake on top. I think he's going to be safe. I think he's going to be able to mount some decent offense on top. I think he hits harder than Jake Hadley, but I think Jake is just better at range and better at boxing. I think he moves his head a bit better than Colin. So to me, I think I'm going to go with decision Laughran. I can't bet him, though. I really can't, because I can see a world where Jake is popping the nose of Colin. Colin is just so hittable to me. And Jake's boxing is good. I think him moving up in weight, I think he's going to perform valiantly here. I'm saying this should be a lot closer. I think the negative perception of Jake losing his last few fights, this is a much, much better fight for Jake Hadley, where there's a possibility of him losing via that decision if Laughran can get on top of him, or possibly get hurt on the feet, because Laughran does have a good amount of power with his punches. He's just very stiff and he's not fluid. That's what I don't like about Colin, that Colin does like to bang. He will sometimes rarely use his wrestling. He will use it if he gets in any sort of trouble here. If Jake starts popping the head back and bloodying the nose of Colin, that's where I want to see that takedown. That's why I'm thinking it should be aligned a lot closer here, because Jake is not going to be like, oh no, I got taken down. He's going to try to work off of his back. But is that what's going to cause him to lose that fight? Now, I'm leaning towards yes. I think Colin's got enough jiu-jitsu to withstand and try to get out of any sort of nasty submissions. And to me, I think Jake can give up takedowns a bit too easily. And here up a weight class against a grown juggernaut like Laughran, boy is thick, man. I think he's going to be able to slam him. That's my thought process. So I have to go with Colin by a decision. But yeah, man, I will be paying close attention to this fight. I think this is a very good sleeper fight, because both guys have a bit of an attitude. Like, they both want to win in the UK. Obviously, Jake wants to win in England, in Manchester. For damn sure, he's going to try to pull out all the stops here, and Colin's going to try to stop that. So I think the cardio edge is going to have to go to Colin. He's got good cardio. Jake, I've never really seen him gas. He has good cardio himself. I think it's going to be definitely vastly improved at 135. So I'm just looking out for those subs. So I do like the idea of maybe taking a shot on Hadley by inside the distance, maybe by sub, or Colin by decision. So official pick, I'll go with Colin. I think he's just going to be too physical on top. But again, I do think that Jake Hadley can pull something out. Like, if Colin gets a little sloppy, if Jake hits him with a good shot on the feet where he just kind of gets disoriented and Colin takes a nasty, sloppy shot, I can see that neck getting snatched up. No problem. Yeah, like, even though Jake is moving up from a lighter weight class, the guy is a tall guy. And I think getting that weight back on him is really going to be beneficial for him. Moving on, we've got Molly McCann versus Bruna Brasil, minus 300 for McCann. Come back on Bruna, the special one. The special one. That should be deserved for Virna Jandiroba. It is plus 240. Now, the line is really wide here between two female strikers. And Caio Borralho will actually be in the corner of Bruna Brasil, so she is training at the Fighting Nerds. And my ultimate thought process when I talked about, like, oh, Krzyzewski's at the Fighting Nerds, they're going to be able to fix his game plan. I thought initially he has a good base. He's got the skills to just get fine-tweaked and be like, don't strike with him, take him down. In this case, with Bruna Brasil, I don't see the skills that they can build off of to be a well-rounded mixed martial artist. I think she can maybe try to weasel her way to a decision here, or maybe even a crazy little finish against Molly McCann, because I think there's a bit of a weak spot for Molly that I'll talk about. But Bruna Brasil, she's so inactive to me. She does not throw sometimes. She tries to set up her point shots, because she also has a point fighting karate style. She likes to set up her high kicks, but I've seen this woman get dominated in the grappling by much smaller women. I've seen her get blasted with an overhand right, which is a really good shot from Molly McCann. She got knocked out by Diana. Oh my God, let me just take a look. Denise Gomez, damn it. Denise Gomez was able to catch her with that overhand. She is another woman who has, like, tall women's defense. She has terrible reaction times as well, where she cannot gauge a good distance. Like, she has all the skills, right? She has all the abilities, she has all the attributes, but she just is not good with that reaction. Kind of keeps her hands a little bit. And the way she beat Shanna Bannon is just by outpointing her and throwing the harder low kicks, just being the more physical and the better kickboxer. One more Muay Thai, the other one Taekwondo. And usually the Muay Thai woman's going to win. Here with Molly McCann, at 115, she looked great her last fight. She looked better than she's ever has. She was confident in the grappling. She was just uber strong. She was strong at 125 as well. And here, like, you can just see the power translate well. The one thing I didn't like about that fight against Belbita hit her to the belly pretty clean, and I just knew instantly she did not like that. I think her cutting weight, that body shot did not sit well with her, where she actually went for the takedown, got her down. And we saw the really good ground game of Molly McCann. She got that armbar. It was beautiful, like beautiful technique that she really couldn't implement in the higher weight class because she was just a bit too small. Here, I mean, she's going to give up 2 inches in reach, 2 inches in height, and 3.5 in reach. And she's used to being the shorter girl at a higher weight class with much bigger women. I think she's going to run through Bruna Brasil. I think Bruna can make it a bit more difficult for Molly if she tries to like just kick from the outside. But Molly, I think she is going to land that overhand right. I think she's going to catch Bruna off guard, and she will grapple Bruna because Bruna's not really the best at offensively or defensively grappling. If it's improved training at the Fighting Nerds, that'd be great. But to me, I think Molly McCann can 100% finish. She will be fighting in England. If things go bad for her, there's nearly no way she can lose in England. I know she lost against Stolienko getting armbarred, but we need to wipe that from our memory. Typically, if this is going to go to the scorecards, I don't see Molly McCann losing. The crowd is going to be oohing and awing and like, oh, for every punch that she doesn't land, and the judges are going to be like, wow, that must have been a big hit. Here's the thing, like when it's that loud, and I've never been in like a judging situation where it's been that loud because like most of my regional fights are, get him, Tyler, get him. But that's it. But if it gets that loud, like I have to write notes down, so I do take a second to look down. And if something happens when I'm like checking something or writing something down, and I hear the oh, even though it doesn't land, it's like, oh, okay. I think the person who is like walking forward must have landed something good. And in this case, I think that's going to help Molly a lot. Bruna, again, super inactive. Let me check her stats because I was very surprised by her overall stats as to like how many punches that she throws. Like, let me look against Shanna Bannon here. Ooh, man. She threw less than 100 strikes. She landed 56. Actually, no, screw that. She threw over 100, but she only landed 73 out of 111 compared to Shanna Bannon, who threw 223 and only landed 124. So she lost that fight. Shanna did, but like she clearly landed more punches. She's too tentative to me, and I think McCann is going to be able to work her magic in her home country, get a finish along the way, possibly even a submission. I just think Molly hits too hard, and Bruna's just so susceptible to getting overhanded that she's going to get caught. Like if she was getting caught pretty cleanly with like distance kicks from oh my God, little Asian girl, Loma Lookboonmee. I'm like, come on, how are you getting muscled around by Loma Lookboonmee? If Loma's tossing you around, Molly McCann's going to pick you up. Like Bruna, I can see her working her takedown defense, but Molly is just going to put her on her shoulders and drop her. So I'll go with Molly McCann by TKO in the second round. I think she gets on top of her after hurting her and finishing her off with strikes. Next bout, we've got, my Lord, minus 500 for Nathaniel Wood, the prospect. He's 30 years old, come back, 38-year-old Daniel Pineda plus 370. Let me just say off the bat, Daniel Pineda, round number one, he's a freak at 145. He's huge at 145 here. He's going to make Nathaniel look tiny compared to him because Nathaniel's a former 135er. Pineda passed drug cheat. The guy has a great guillotine. He's got great submissions, great takedowns. He hits hard. He's got vet. He's just got vet written all over him. He's 28-15. He's fought a lot of good people. The guy is a known finisher, but he's also a known gasser. He will slow down. He will gas out. He's tough as hell. He will take an ass whooping, and he won't quit. Like, he will not quit on himself, and he's a very dangerous opponent for Nathaniel Wood, especially early. Nathaniel's been caught Nathaniel's been knocked out. He's lost to a much lesser fighter in the past, lesser than he. But to me, Nathaniel Wood, although he's not worth the minus 500, he is the much better fighter. I think even at 135, or I'm sorry, at 145, a weight class that I don't think he belongs in, he is the better counter striker. He's the more pinpoint striker. Pineda does kind of keep his hands low a bit. I think Pineda's going to come out here and try to grapple with Nathaniel Wood, who's a competent grappler. But eventually, I do think that Wood will start finding the home for the straight right hands. He's got beautiful counter boxing. They both have hard low kicks, very hard low kicks from Pineda especially. And to me, I think Nathaniel Wood's just going to chip away at Pineda. He's not going to get caught in any sort of like firefight with Pineda because that's what he's going to want. I think he's going to be a little too quick. Now, the biggest issue, of course, is Pineda is uber experienced. He hits hard, and he can submit you at any point. He can grapple Nathaniel Wood just by muscling him down, which is how he lost his last fight. I just don't see Pineda being able to do that effectively for all 3 rounds, and eventually I think he's going to slow down if he doesn't finish Nathaniel Wood, and Wood will eventually pick him apart, where I can see Nathaniel Wood knocking him out in like the late second round or third round. So I am going to pick Wood to knock him out in the second round. I think he's going to find something very clean. I think Pineda's biggest problem is very good counter-striking and very good boxing, which Nathaniel Wood has. He is a very fast guy as well. So it's going to be the speed versus the power of Pineda, like the brute strength of Pineda, a true 145er, huge man, versus clearly a much smaller, much quicker guy. It's just that Wood has to be absolutely careful, and because he is at that price range of minus 500, there's no value in Nathaniel Wood at all. It's so much so that he can't go any higher. I think he is going to have a rough first round where the odds are going to drop. They are going to drop. So there's no value in it. I would say inside the distance for both. Daniel Pineda round number 1 doesn't go the distance. I just don't see Pineda being able to withstand the clean straight punches of Nathaniel Wood when he gets his groove, and he's going to want to get that finish. Now, if Nathaniel Wood decides, hey, it might be a little bit too dangerous to try to strike with this guy, maybe stay on the outside, pick my shots, he can definitely get a decision here. Thus, I think there's more value in taking Pineda as a slight dog just for the hell of it, because he has that finishing upside. So I'll still go with Wood round number 2 knockout, but pretty much so all the value would be on Pineda at those odds. Next bout, we've got Arnold Allen main card opener versus Giga Chikadze. Now, I'm looking at the line plus 210 for Chikadze, and it's not a great line. It should be lined a bit closer. Minus 260 for Arnold Allen. That's a tough one as well. Now, Arnold is the better, well-rounded fighter, and Giga Chikadze, he's very good as a kickboxer. He's 35 years old. He had his last fight, when was that? 10 months ago against Alex Caceres, and I had to view his performance a bit differently in context, because when you look at previous tape on him, on Giga, he is explosive. He throws a ton of power with the kicks, and that was kind of lacking in that fight with Caceres. He had been away for a while after having a really tough fight with Calvin Kattar, and he adjusted his style a bit where it was a little less volume, a little less power. But what I noticed about Giga is that he kind of had a hard time in that first round getting things going. He did win that fight, at least in my scorecard, 29-28. He started picking up the pace in round number 2, landing his harder shots. He's a big boy. He has a 4-inch reach advantage over Arnold Allen. The thing is, his boxing has never been something that I would consider to be good. He can throw punches, but his primary weapon of choice being the kicks to the body, kicks to the head, nasty kicks. And I think he needs to be the one pressuring here. He has great footwork. I'm very not sold on Giga Chikadze currently. I think there's value in taking him at these odds for damn sure, because if this becomes a striking affair, and which it more than likely is going to be, Arnold, I know he's strong. I know he can grapple, and he should, but I don't know if he'll be able to get Giga down to the mat to kind of work him there. Calvin kind of showed that if you get him to the ground and if you're competent, you can hold him down there and gas him out, which I think that it should be the game plan. I'm not saying it will be. It should be the game plan of Arnold Allen. Like, Arnold can grapple. Arnold has good cardio himself, and he loves to pressure guys, right? I look at his fighting style, even against a guy as good as Max Holloway, which is a much better striker boxing-wise than Giga. He crowded him up. He was landing good power shots. There were some shots there that, like, if Giga would have eaten opposed to Max, like, it would have made an effect here. Like, Giga's got a good chin. He's very tough and durable, but those punches that were landing on Max were like, whoa, how is he eating this crap for real? So with Arnold, he loves the pressure. He likes to keep it on the inside. He's got, to me, a lot better boxing defense than Giga Chikadze. He has a lot of power in that left hand. And with them having that split stance, and Giga can switch stances himself, but for him to land the Giga kick, the kick to the liver, I think Arnold's going to have that pegged because he's going to be standing the opposite to him. So it's going to be a little harder for Giga to land that. And for me, I think Giga does slow down if he does throw a lot of offense. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword for Giga. He has to throw a lot of offense to clearly be winning these rounds, which he can do, I think, once he gets his confidence back, which it could come back in this fight. He did not have that confidence in that Caceres fight. He fought very close early. He can gas out if he throws a ton of volume. At that point, like having Arnold Allen just being on him, crowding him, allowing him not to kick him, I think it's going to gas him out a bit. So if Arnold gets in close, I think he can land and be the much faster guy. It's a tough one. It really is, because when they're both good strikers, where's the value at? I don't see the value in Arnold Allen. I think the more value is on Giga, but I do think Arnold's going to win based off of that pressure. So Arnold's very good. I don't think he's going to lose 3 in a row, especially at home. I don't think they're going to do that to him. Giga would have to put up some ridiculous numbers, which he is capable of doing himself. Even against Calvin Kattar in 5 rounds, when he was gassed, when he was busted up, he never stopped fighting. It's just when he throws that amount of volume early, he tends to get guys out of there or do enough damage to like be the one being the advancing party. When he's retreating backwards and throwing that much volume, he will get tired. And it's going to be a lot easier for Arnold Allen to start landing that left-hand missile on him if Giga's hands start dropping a bit. And that's kind of what I'm leaning towards, that Giga's going to get a bit more fatigued with the bit of grappling, maybe in the clinch by Arnold Allen. I can see Arnold making this a little bit boring by just kind of holding Giga and controlling him and landing some decent shots. But there's definitely, make no mistake, do not underestimate Giga here. I think betting-wise, probably better to take Giga, take a shot on him, than to lay the chalk on Arnold Allen. Because if this becomes a very close fight, where the striking numbers are very close as well, who's going to be the one landing the hardest shots? Is it going to be the kicks of Giga, or is it going to be the hard, crazy punches of Arnold Allen, who, although he has very high fight IQ and very good boxing defense, I mean, he has like that cross guard up very well. He takes a lot of shots to the arms. If he can't land cleanly on Giga, and Giga's just landing these kicks, all that value goes out the window on Arnold Allen. So I think it's going to go to a decision. As I mentioned, his high fight IQ, although he has that high fight IQ with a great defense, we've seen time and time again, if he needs to put the pedal to the metal and go after a guy like he did against Dan Hooker, he will go out there and start landing bombs on a guy. He just has to be very careful here. I think that could benefit him as well. If he gets a bit aggressive with Giga, but not overly aggressive, he can make Giga make a mistake where he can catch Giga, just land those punches, and just win based off of those big spurts of moments. So to me, I'll pass on this one. I will go with Allen just because I think the hometown crowd is going to be on his side. Where again, he landed that punch on the glove and oh my God, he nearly knocked him out, says the crowd. And that's going to benefit him here. So yeah, the crowd needs to be in the favor of these English fighters for them to kind of edge these close decisions. So I'll go with Arnold Allen to win a decision here, but not my most confident pick. Like, Giga's a big boy. He's 6 foot tall. He's a very good kickboxer, man. Like, going back and like watching his fights again, I'm like, you can just see how good he's gotten over the years. But that fatigue, if it starts setting in against a guy like Arnold Allen, it's not going to be a good night for him. Next bout, Christian Leroy Duncan versus Gregory Rodrigues. Now, I taped this fight like extensively just to make sure where the holes are, because it's a closely odd fight. -115 for Christian Leroy Duncan, And the comeback on Rodriges, he's minus 105. So I think the money's actually come in on Duncan. And I understand. When I first heard about this fight, I was on the Duncan side. And I wanted to make sure if I was correct because, like, pre-tape, I've got my impressions of Duncan, but has he definitely fixed the issues in the past? Because I have faded this guy on a couple of occasions, and one of the times I was right because of his specific style. Now, with Christian Leroy Duncan, he's a big boy, 6'2", 79-inch reach. He has got a Taekwondo background. He's got a good record himself. He's 10-1. He's fought amateur-wise. He's lost amateurs. And with his first UFC loss against Armen Petrosian, funny enough, both of these men lost to Petrosian by a decision, you can kind of sense that he took it and he learned from it. Because previously, this guy was like a high-fly, acrobatic kind of guy, like very swaggy, a lot of spins and stuff, like nothing basic about him. But that wasn't beneficial for him against top-level competition with harder, more seasoned fighters and kickboxers who ain't gonna take that. Like, this guy was doing some weird stuff against Petrosian. Like, he would throw a kick, he would just kind of be hopping around. He was trying to be flashy instead of effective, and he wasn't using his size, or he wasn't using his God-given gift of a reach for him. The dude is uber athletic, and after that loss to Petrosian, you can kind of see the improvements. He was working on his jab. He was working on using his physicality, using his strength, using his elbows. Like, he busted up, God, I forget his name, Dennis Tallulah. Both these men destroyed Tallulah, one more so than the other. But funny enough, they both finished him with elbows. But you can see that improvement of, like, hey, utilize your jab, for God's sake. He wasn't throwing many jabs. He was just trying to be a little bit flashy, because normally in the regional scenes in Cage Warriors, he would hit these guys and they would fall. And when he got to the higher ups, like, these guys weren't falling. So he's been working on his boxing, and I've liked the improvements he's been making. 100% Claudio Ribeiro. I know he's fought two bums that are no longer in the UFC, but those improvements of, like, keep him on the outside. He's got excellent movement. He's incredibly athletic. So I'm thinking, yeah, he should be able to beat RoboCop. That the perception of RoboCop is more like the legend of RoboCop, I think, is more grandiose than his fighting style. Don't get me wrong, I love me some Gregory Rodriges. The guy is a known finisher, heavy hands. He's a big dude, great jiu-jitsu, but he is so hit or miss with Rodriges, where he's got that jiu-jitsu ability, but I think his takedowns aren't great. His entries aren't great. His control from top sometimes isn't as dominant as it needs to be. And if he tries to grapple sometimes, I think he might tire himself out a bit. He hasn't gassed in the UFC, but I am curious as to why he doesn't implement more of his grappling. Like, he hasn't gotten a submission in the UFC despite him being so dominant on the mat. Like, he's very credentialed. And the only finish he got was against Tallulah, where he did take him down. He kind of muscled him down and just elbowed the crap out of him. He was able to actually get Tavares down one of the few times Tavares is on his back and control him a bit. The thing with Duncan is that he does have a history of guys trying to take him down. He's definitely improved, I think, with his athletic ability and him not being as wild. Like, he's given up takedowns by going for flying knees when they weren't necessary, and I think he's calmed down a bit. So my biggest worry is if RoboCop gets him to the ground, how is he going to fare there? Is he going to dominate Christian? He's got every possibility of doing so, but is he going to be able to get him down? My answer ultimately was it's maybe. It's not a yes or no, because RoboCop is more than comfortable striking with guys. He's got good hands, good boxing. He hits hard. My issue with Duncan, sometimes he is a little lackadaisical. His boxing isn't still very great, but he's at least working on that. But he has great movement. The other issue I had with Duncan is that sometimes with his, like, Taekwondo background, he can sometimes put himself out of position where he gives his back to his opponent trying to, like, get out of the way. Like, he'll duck and then he'll spin. And if, say, Rodriges leaps in for a punch and he sees the back of Christian Leroy as he's retreating, he can probably get the waist and try to take him down. So stuff like that, Christian still makes those mistakes, but ultimately, like, he is ridiculously athletic. to the point that I think that he will be able to catch Rodriges with something. I think if he keeps him at the end of the jab, it's such a very good fight because even on the feet, I think Rodriges can catch Duncan. But the speed of Duncan is going to give Rodriges a ton of issues. If he's straight down the middle, Rodriges does not move his head. The other issue with Rodriges is that his chin is just like a weird time bomb. It's like, what is that? Like, it's like the hot potato, basically. Like, either you catch it and you're safe, as in he catches that punch to the mouth and he takes it fine, like a really hard shot, or the most ridiculously goofy shot will punch him and knock him out. Like, he got hit by Bruno with like a, I don't know how hard Bruno hits for him to knock out Rodriges, to knock him down and like smack his head. But to me, it didn't even look like that hard of a shot. So it's like, what is it with Rodriges' chin? Like, what is the catalyst for him getting hit like that and just dropping? Because like other times, he'll just eat these shots like no big deal. The dude's ridiculously tough. But with RoboCop, it's just such a like, if he is a dog, it is kind of a dogger pass on either or character. So at this point, I think Rodriges might be the more value. But to me, given all the circumstances, Christian fighting at home being uber athletic, I do think he hasn't been battle tested quite yet. I mean, my biggest worry is that if he gets a little too lazy, not popping the jab, I think he will for sure. Rodriges can just kind of bum rush. And at that point, is Christian going to be able to land the counter shot to hurt Rodriges, or is Rodriges going to eat it? That's like the biggest thing. If Rodriges eats these shots, he can kind of berserker himself in, try to get him down. The other issue is that if Rodriges tries for any stupid, lazy shots, Christian Leroy Duncan is known to go flying knee on a guy trying to take him down. For that reason, I do have to go with Duncan. I think that Duncan is going to time knees up the middle, similar to how Chidi did. I think he's strong enough and he's gotten better in the clinch to be able to defend takedowns from Rodriges. If he does get taken down, like he's been there before, just chill out and then pick your spots again with Rodriges. But damn, Rodriges is a tough out for anybody because he is so mythical sometimes. But I do have to go with Duncan on this one, second round knockout. I'm really excited for this one because it will show me if Christian Leroy Duncan, who has miraculously gotten his hairline back, which is crazy, new hairline Duncan, probably going to be champ one day. But it's a very interesting fight because RoboCop can beat anybody in the division and also lose to anyone in that division. So despite the skill differential, where I think RoboCop is a much more skilled guy, the more talented guy to me is Christian Duncan with that athleticism and that awkward movement. So I'll go with Duncan, second round knockout. Next bout. This one was getting me fits as well because I heard an interview with Patty and MMA Guru, and I was like, oh, wow, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense, and I'll get to that. But he is plus 105, Patty versus Bobby Green minus 125, which I'm assuming you can probably still get Patty at dog odds. Yeah, Patty said during that interview that, oh yeah, like Bobby doesn't do well when he's the one moving forward, so I try to be, more than likely, try to be the counter striker in this fight. So I'm like, oh, that makes sense. Yeah, sure. Because Patty does have power. He clearly has a great jiu-jitsu where he could catch Bobby Green with a submission or maybe pound him out. But when I look at his fights, it's just so rough. It is ridiculously rough seeing tape on Paddy Pimblett. And considering him being the younger guy, he makes so many mistakes. He keeps his chin up in the air. When he tried doing that counter-strike game plan against Tony Ferguson, Tony was looking good against Paddy Pimblett. And I was like, bro, his chin is still up in the air. Like, he even braided his hair just to make sure his hair doesn't go flailing and make it look like he's losing by getting punched. And it's just with a striker the caliber of Bobby Green, Paddy's not going to be winning these exchanges if he's counter-striking. I think Bobby's just too good at striking to get caught with, say, a counter from Paddy, who I think is going to telegraph these things. With Bobby, he is, 37 now. He's excellent at striking, great defensively. He's got great wrestling. The guy throws a ton of volume. The guy can beat you up with just a jab. The issue with Bobby, though, he has been knocked out viciously recently, twice, and he's been getting dropped a bit more. And on top of that, like his reactions aren't as clean as they used to be with age, obviously, and damage. It's just made him a little bit more frail, which to me, this is one of the harder fights because for either side to win, something specifically has to happen. Like Paddy in his last fight did not have good cardio. He gassed out against Tony Ferguson, and that was a rough fight. Like Paddy clearly won it, but it was a rough one. He even hurt Tony, and he wasn't able to finish him, but he kind of blew his gas trying to finish Tony in that first round, and his takedowns weren't looking good. He had really sloppy takedowns. I think with Paddy, he's more capable of getting submissions if he's taken down or someone's trying to engage the grappling with him, and Bobby's not going to do that. Paddy taking down Bobby, it's possible for damn sure. I just, his entries are not good. He kind of telegraphs things from a mile away. He's just not very good on the feet. He does have like a karate style, very good high kicks, very good loosey-goosey stuff, but his punches are brutal, and he's got terrible defense. So what am I leaning here? Ultimately, if Bobby Green clearly can keep it on the feet and just beat up Bobby or beat up Paddy, landing more damage to him, he's clearly going to be able to edge this out. I think Bobby's got more of a chance to win this one by a decision than Paddy does. I think Paddy needs to get a finish or do enough damage each round to get the decision, which I think is going to be hard to do to Bobby Green without finishing him. So ultimately my thought is, what is the best game plan for Pimblett here? Because I know what Bobby's going to do. He's going to do exactly what he always does. He's going to get hit to the shoulder. He's going to get hit to the chin, say it's the shoulder. He's going to talk crap to Paddy. He's going to do everything in his power to let the judges know that Paddy ain't nothing, ain't crap, ain't shit. And if Paddy tries to counter, it's not going to go well for him, right? Maybe he can catch Bobby with something. What Paddy does best in every single one of his fights that I've noticed, even the Jared Gordon fight where everyone's saying that he lost, going back, it's still really close because I see certain things each time, like who won what, who won this, who won that. It was split as into who gave which rounds to Pimblett. Some were 1 and 2, the others were 2 and 3. When Paddy goes first and he's aggressive with that blitz, that's when he's the most dangerous. The Vendramini fight, he went forward, he hurt Vendramini because he does carry a ton of power. It's just he has to go in that berserker mode. He has to catch Bobby Green with something. And I think that's what he's going to eventually do. I think if he is telling the truth about being patient and trying to counter-strike, he ain't going to like it. It's not going to go his way. But I do think that Paddy is going to take enough shots where he's going to say, screw it, I'm going berserker mode, your sausage. And he's going to catch Bobby Green, and he's probably going to finish him in the second round. I think Bobby's going to look good early. 100%. Like, there's no way he doesn't. There's also a very high likelihood if Paddy just cracks him with like a flying knee or something crazy in the first round, he can hurt Bobby. I mean, if you're getting dropped by Jim Miller at this point, Bobby Green, man, he got dropped twice by Jim. The other thing is that, like, when you look at the guys hurting Bobby, usually straight punches or like a nasty hook from Drew Dober. But yeah, if Paddy can catch Bobby Green, because he does keep his hands low. Both these guys kind of keep their hands a little awkwardly low. I think it's going to look like Bobby Green's going to win this fight come the second round or late first round. That's when where Paddy's going to uncoil and just start like going berserk. And if he does catch Bobby, I think he's going to hurt Bobby, and I think they're going to stop it, or Bobby might protest it. But yeah, I think if Paddy lands one of those creepy, goofy little lightning hooks, it will hurt Bobby Green, which sucks to say. Because I would like Bobby to win this one, because with Paddy, the day is going to come where he's going to lose in the UFC, because if he's not making these improvements defensively with his striking and his offensive wrestling, he's got a very limited ceiling. Now, if Bobby beats Paddy Pimblett, oh man, that's going to be rough for Paddy, especially at home. So yeah, I'll go with Paddy by knockout. I don't think he can afford to lose this fight. I think he's got a solid enough chin where he can take one to give one. And I think when he decides to, like, that's enough and he goes forward with that berserk, I think that's where he's going to catch Bobby. So I'll go with a second round knockout for Paddy Pimblett. Next bout, the co-main event, we've got Tom Aspinall versus Curtis Blaydes 2. It's crazy. I've been talking for like an hour and a half, and I thought I had like more fights to go. Minus 400 for Tom. Come back on Curtis Blaydes is plus 310. Now, first fight happened. Tom Aspinall blew out his knee, and Curtis Blaydes, was upset about it. He was like, what happened? I have my theories and my opinions on Curtis. I've always thought the same thing about Curtis because I'm not allowing myself to curse due to my poor performance last week. To put it nicely, Curtis is he is lacking the fortitude in his mandible, meaning he has a weak mandible, and he in the past, say if he were to take an IQ test, it would be very low, probably below average IQ when it comes to fighting sometimes. So he's a below average IQ fighter with a weak mandible. God, I wish I could say it. But anyways, Curtis Blaydes, great wrestler, improved boxing. He's a wrestle boxer. That's it. That's really it. Nothing really too special about him at heavyweight. It's a good thing to have because not many people are going to be able to stuff your takedowns. Not many people are going to be able to stop the big mass that is Curtis Blaydes, a Division I wrestler. Tom Aspinall, minus 400, 31 years old. To me, he is the best heavyweight in the UFC right now. Part of me is thinking with Jon Jones' recent issues that they might crown the winner of this the official undisputed heavyweight champion. Now, if Curtis Blaydes gets it, if he wins via some magical voodoo, because I am picking Tom Aspinall, then props to him. He has been clawing his way to this title for the longest time. He should have been champion. But there's always been the stumbling blocks where either it was Ngannou twice or who knocked him out also. I know Ngannou obviously beat him twice, but who also knocked him out? I know he got knocked out by the Russian experiment in Pavlovich. The uppercut by Derek Lewis. That uppercut by Derek Lewis stopped every bit of momentum for this boy, because I think he at that point would have fought for the title and may have done well. But that seems to be the story of Curtis Blaydes. He gets so close at certain points and then he can't make it. So part of me is yeah, good. I'm happy that Curtis got this title shot. Even though it's the interim shot, it's still better than nothing, right? As for Tom Aspinall, to me, Tom has been slowly becoming the top guy at heavyweight. I don't think he was quite ready prior. I really think that he needed the Curtis Blaydes fight to really cement himself as the guy he is now. Prior to that, he was good, definitely good. I just didn't have that oomph to him. I just didn't see the potential for him being the heavyweight champion. I thought he needed to show more. He needed to show a bit more patience, a bit more dominance with his style, because I think his style itself is very good at heavyweight, very light on his feet, very good at boxing. He's got the jiu-jitsu. And I think the fight with Curtis Blaydes would have been the first one, would have been the defining point that shows us, hey, this guy's got it. But had he beaten Curtis at that time, I think eventually someone would have beaten Tom. Maybe that knee was a ticking time bomb. I don't know. But the version of Tom that we have now, that I'm looking at now, the way he's beating these guys, the way he beat Tybura and Pavlovich is just, to me, the most definitive version of Tom Aspinall, where he's not doing too much. He's displaying his speed, and then when people try to close the distance on him, he is just quick with the hands. And that's what I've noticed in those last two fights compared to the first fight with Curtis Blaydes. The first fight with Curtis Blaydes, he put the pressure on Blaydes, and that ultimately, I hate to say it, but the way he was fighting at that point, knee destroyed or not knee destroyed, he was getting clipped by Blaydes. And I'm like, why are you going towards the wrestler? Why are you trying to finish him? He was just trying to be dominant and not use his range and not use his superior footwork. And I think it would have cost him, or he would have paid the price in that fight, whether he would have been finished at that point, he would have gotten taken down. He was just crowding Blaydes a bit too much. Now coming back, when he fought Tybura, he was on the outside, he was picking his shots, he was avoiding the punches, he was just more patient. He was doing similar to a Cyril Gane type of fight. Hey, I don't need to come to you. You need to come to me. You need to hit me, because if I stay on my distance and I hit you from the outside, I can leap in and leap out. it's going to be hard for you to touch me. Like all I have to do is just avoid whatever shot you're throwing, whether the right hand or the jab. And I think Curtis does have a good jab. I should mention that. And the same thing with Pavlovich. He wasn't like, oh, I'm going to stay in the pocket with you and try to box with you, or I'm going to try to walk you down. No, he was skirting on the outside. And then when he found his shot, because he is the much faster guy, hit him down and finished him on the mat. I think that's exactly what he's going to do against Blaydes. He's going to be on the outside. He's going to make Curtis get frustrated. And Curtis is very well known to not engage in wrestling up until he's hurt. Like that is my biggest issue with him. I've picked against him almost every single time, even against lesser boxer fighters, the Bukauskas of the world. I'm like, yeah, if Curtis stays on the feet, Bukauskas has a chance. Ultimately, he didn't. In this case, I think Tom Aspinall has good takedown defense. Tom Aspinall has good jiu-jitsu to stay safe on bottom. I think he has good enough jiu-jitsu to threaten off of his back if it does come to that. Ultimately, the way I see this going, Tom is going to do what Tom does. He stays on the outside. He's going to be confident. He's going to wait for Curtis to come in. Curtis, he's probably going to try to time that jab. But ultimately, I do see Curtis getting hurt, taking a knee or something, and then that's where Tom's just going to start blasting. Now, Tom has to be very careful not to get taken down because, like, the big mass of Blaydes, if he gets the train going and he blasts for that double, it's going to be hard to stuff that. He's a tough dude, but if he gets in close, I think Tom has got the takedown defense to grapple, grab the wrist, disengage, knee to the body, similar to the way he did against Sergey Spivak. Spivak is actually the only real wrestler, grappler that he's fought, and he passed that with flying colors. Very similar, just being light on his feet. Here, do the same thing, light on your feet. You're going to catch Blaydes. God, how awful would it be if he gets injured again against Curtis Blaydes? So to me, Tom Aspinall, I think this is going to go under 1.5. Either man can get the finish here, but I'll go with TKO round number 1. I think he is going to catch him. 5 minutes at heavyweight is an eternity. And with Blaydes fighting the way he's been fighting recently, like, he is not looking like the same dude. He's taking a lot of damage. He is capable of winning this fight for sure. Those odds indicate that's a great line to take at Blaydes. Might even meme it and take a round number 1 finish for Blaydes just in case some wackiness happens. But Tom Aspinall, I think, is a rightful heavyweight champion right now. And, I think he's going to finish Blaydes in the first round. All right, main event. Leon Edwards versus Belal Muhammad 2. Muhammad is plus 185. Come back on Edwards, minus 225. Funny thing I noticed is that they have the exact same record, 22-3. Both men have been beaten 3 times. Well, actually, I just realized it's 22-3. Whatever. Anyways, close enough. So this fight, the rematch, first fight happened. The eye poke happened. There's a lot of disputes as to what would have happened had that fight gone extended. Leon won round number 1, hurt Belal, and there's some stuff that I saw in that fight that I really liked from Leon. Mostly the idea that he was the better striker, and he did not shy away from engaging in the grappling with Belal Muhammad. He couldn't take Belal down, but him engaging in that wrestling kind of broke things up well enough for him to disengage because Belal couldn't take him down. And recently, that's been Belal Muhammad's game, clinching up, getting takedowns. He can strike for sure. He's got good hard kicks. As much as I dislike Belal Muhammad as a fighter, I got to say the positives about him. He has really hard low kicks. I say as a fighter, not as a person. I don't know him as a person. But I've just never found him to be entertaining. Like, he beats up guys sometimes, and he looks good, but, what's up with his physique is what I'm asking. Like, I remember seeing him one time in Chicago years ago, and I'm like, oh, I'm bigger than this guy. And then now he's like, what kind of vitamins are you taking there? What kind of herbs are you using there for them burgers? So suspicious. And man, like, I can at least value that he's been beating guys and he's been on a good win streak. I don't know about him, man. I just think it's a little sussy. But yeah, good hard kicks, low kicks, body kicks. He's getting more well-rounded. But make no mistake, he wants this to the ground. That's where he's the strongest. He's got really good takedown defense, but very much meat and potatoes kind of guy. I don't know what's in that meat, but like the very basic meat and potatoes, very grappling heavy, very strong on top. This is the second time he's going to a 5-round fight. The first time was against Luque in the UFC, that is. Gassed out pretty badly, getting takedowns, and then Luque just looked absolutely horrible that fight. That was like the first warning sign of like, hey, Luque might be done here. And second fight was a sparring session with Gilbert Burns where he was hurt, Gilbert was hurt, couldn't finish an injured man. It was what it was. It was just more of a sparring matchup. But that the issue with Bilal is that when he goes all out for those takedowns, which he might do that here against Edwards, if he doesn't, it's going to be rough for him because Edwards is going to be able to stuff takedowns, attack the body, disengage. If he goes all out for those takedowns and say he gets them and he doesn't finish Leon, he will gas out. He will get tired. That's gonna put a really hard toll on his body. Leon has been 5 rounds the last how many times? 4 times? Yeah, Diaz 5-rounder, Usman 5-rounder, Usman 5-rounder, Colby Covington 5-rounder. Cardio looked good. He's fought 3 straight wrestlers back to back, and I think Leon at this point, it's going to be really tough to beat him, especially if you don't have that concussive knockout power. I mean, Bilal kind of pillow-fisted, but it doesn't take much for Leon to get hurt. Leon is the better striker, the better kickboxer. I think he's got definitively better skills than Muhammad, but the one thing that Muhammad can do is clinch up, take him down, be heavy on top. I think Leon can do the same, like get on top of Muhammad, take his back, but it's going to be hard to get him down. I think at one point, if Leon can wrestle him, take his back standing, and then maybe lace him, get him to the ground, he can probably do some damage there. There's a lot of positives that I've seen from Edwards. Is obviously his takedown defense against the cage has improved. That's mostly where Bilal gets his work done. His takedown defense, like 2-on-1 with the arms, his takedown defense against Colby was good. I know Colby was kind of like whatever. There was a couple of occasions where he stuffed every takedown from Colby. Colby was entering for a takedown, and Leon confidently said, I don't care if you take me down. He went for an armbar at one point. He was able to get back up. I think Leon's ability at this point is tailor-made to beat Bilal Muhammad again. Well, he didn't beat him the first time, but to beat him up and actually win the fight. The high kicks of Usman, of Edwards, are going to be there. To me, I cannot pick against Edwards to win this fight, more than likely by a decision. I think it's very likely for it to be close because ultimately in that 5th round, Leon did give up a takedown to Colby, and he was able to control him for a bit. So if those last 2 rounds, if say Leon's cardio gasses out, like if he gets tired and Bilal starts taking over, it could start swinging the way of Bilal Muhammad. I actually do see this one being a really grueling back and forth fight where Bilal might be able to get some takedowns, Leon gets back up. Both men might be fatigued by the 5th, once it hits the 5th, and whoever wants it more is going to end up winning the fight. And by wants it more, I mean whoever is from that country, meaning Bilal Muhammad is not going to win in the UK when Leon Edwards is fighting at home. So that'd be some crazy stuff if say Leon realistically wins 3 rounds. Maybe 1 round was close, but you would edge it to him and they give it to Bilal Muhammad 49-46 or something. That'd be hilarious. But yeah, make no mistake, there is value on Bilal Muhammad at that plus money, the plus 186. It's just that if he cannot get Leon Edwards down, yes, he can strike with him, but he is not the quicker, slicker striker than Edwards. And if Edwards has been training his takedown defense, which he has for 3 straight camps, working get-ups and all, it's going to be rough for Bilal Muhammad. So I'm going to go with Edwards by decision. Make no mistake, this is 100% a Bilal Muhammad fade. I don't want him to win this one because, like, what's next? Bilal Muhammad versus Shafkat? Maybe I do want Bilal Muhammad to win. That'd be a good one. That'd be a very quick fight for Shafkat. But yeah, my pick is going to be Edwards. I think from the tape that I've watched, Yes, Bilal could win this one, but it's gonna be more so based off of Edwards getting fatigued, and will Bilal get fatigued here? My indicators say yes if he's going all out for these takedowns. He got fatigued against a Wonder Boy, where he dominated Wonder Boy. It's just Wonder Boy couldn't take advantage. He's just not as good of a fighter than Leon is, even though I think Wonder Boy could probably knock out Leon Edwards because of his chin. As a fighter with his grappling ability, it's going to be rough. Again, the main reasoning why I think Edwards is probably going to win this fight pretty cleanly, at least 48-47. Is that even possible? Yeah, fuck it, 48-47. Is that he was not afraid to engage in the wrestling with Bilal. Like, he did not take him seriously enough to not want to engage with them. I think Edwards' skills at this point have vastly developed for him to be the rightful champ, unfortunately, as much as I don't really like Leon. And he's kind of boring himself. But I didn't even realize that Bilal was 36, man. I think the PEDs are going to be doing some damage to that body, but I also think that Leon should probably fake the eye pokes as well, kind of make Bilal Muhammad. Oh my lord! Imagine if he pokes Bilal Muhammad and he wins the fight via eye poke. So it's Bilal Muhammad wins the title based off of an eye poke. That'd be really, really, really funny. That would be hilarious to me. But still, I will go with Bilal to probably give up these 3 rounds to Edwards. I got to stop saying that. I got to be definitive. Leon Edwards is going to beat Bilal Muhammad by decision. I could go back and forth. I think that Bilal will put up a good fight. I do think so. I think he's going to try to clinch him up. If that becomes a very hard, grueling clinching affair up against the cage, say if Bilal is just like maybe damaged. Another thing about Bilal, though, if he does get hurt, which he's been hurt before, he has a good lateral movement. He does protect himself very well. And Leon, he doesn't have the best finishing ability himself, other than like with a head kick or maybe an elbow or just something. Like he doesn't really have the hardest punches. So that's why I'm leaning towards a decision here. But yeah, I am looking forward to this card, definitely. On top of that, trying to make sure I don't screw the pooch. I do not want to be 3 straight weeks in a row where I suck as the worst MMA capper on the YouTubes. But yeah, let me know what you think in the comments below. Johnny TigerBomb MMA, and I will see you next week.